Don't arrest those children. It was my fault. I gave them the toys.
You? How dare you? You are obviously a nonconformist and a rebel.
Me? Rebel?
Arrest this man immediately.
Hello and welcome once again to the Cine-Files, where we are continuing our exploration of the holiday movies of Rankin and Bass. My name is Steve Morris. I am a filmmaker and directing instructor in Los Angeles, California.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Rocha. I'm a writer, producer, and host and voiceover artist here in San Diego, California. And happy holidays, Merry Christmas season greetings to everybody. I hope you're enjoying our previous episode from yesterday. And I'm excited to dive into this episode with you, Steve.
I am too. And it's so funny watching, because what we get to see here, which normally we only see, once a year when we do our deep dive on a director, is that we get to see the evolution of these filmmakers from their their second really big thing out, which is Rudolph, which you and I both have strong feelings about, but also you can see that it's, they're just kind of getting started and we're going to move through some of their career. Now, we're not going to talk about what happened next, which is they did some more movies like The Cricket on the Hearth, The Little Drummer Boy, Frosty the Snowman. But guess what? We're not going to talk about them here, but we are going to talk about them in our Cine-Files short, which should be coming out just about when this is coming out. Yeah. And the best place to get that is either on patreon.com/the Cine-Files or on Apple Podcasts, where you have access not only to our Rankin and Bass Cine-File shorts, but also to all of our Cine-File shorts, as well as ad-free versions of the show. You could join our advisory board and a whole bunch of other great stuff. So that's a great way to support the show.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to support the show even more, or maybe you want to support the show in a different way, please listen to all the ads that we have in the breaks here and see if there's a product that you enjoy. And if it appeals to you, if you like it, if you want to use it, you want to try it out, please make sure you use our code. You get percentages off depending on the product. You get, I don't know, things anywhere from 10 to 50% off, I think, sometimes, depending on the product. So go and patronize them and let them know you support their product, and they will keep continuing and supporting the Cine-Files here on the podcast.
But right now, we're not going to talk about those other Rankin and Bass movies, because we are jumping to 1970 and Santa Claus is Coming to Town. I'm going to ask the question I always ask, but I think the answer is kind of figured out, which is, how did you come to this film?
I think the same way I came to Rudolph. I was plopped in front of a television by my parents. It was on probably on NBC, maybe CBS. And then I just remember watching this and being absolutely in love with the stop motion approach to these stories, and knowing these songs, obviously before I watched these stories or these specials here. Obviously it came out in 1970. I was born in 1970, but I was singing the songs through elementary school, and then eventually watching these specials on TV and seeing the story fleshed out even more,
Yeah. Same answer for me. I watched it since the beginning of time. Whenever, I'm born in 1968, so I guess I didn't watch it the first couple of years of my life, but pretty much I have no memory of not watching this every Christmas. And I'll tell you right now, this was always my favorite. I love Year Without a Santa Claus as well, but I love this one in particular. And I think the real reason I love this so much is that I was a huge comic book kid. And this is a superhero origin story. Yeah, that's what this really is. It is exactly. I remember when I was collecting Legion of Superheroes, and they would do like a spotlight on Lightning Lad, spotlight on Saturn Girl, whatever. And they would do a whole issue that was just their origin. And you would find out all these little details, how they got this power, why they picked this costume, all this thing. That's exactly what this movie is. Yeah. It's just like, we are going to answer all the questions about how Santa got to be Santa and put it all together. And for me, really successfully.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. It's one that I've always enjoyed watching. I think you can tell that they're hitting their stride. Yeah. Like they're very much in their prime as creators. This one is so much more sharper, on point, and interesting than Rudolph. Even though Rudolph is a good start, this one you can tell they understood the game plan and the blueprint and the formula to make a really good special. And this one is so much fun, and what a incredible cast of actors that they brought in to be a part of this thing. Also, another way that they've kind of leveled up in terms of the names that they're bringing in to be a part to voice over these characters. And I like the story. It's an unusual take. There was a film that came out a couple of 3 or 4 years ago. It's on Netflix, and I highly recommend people to watch it. Klaus, the animated film that explored it from the German point of view, is how Santa Claus came to be. And it's a fascinating an incredibly well done animated film. And so for me, these two are kind of companion pieces in terms of it being an origin story. So it's a great point you bring up, Steve.
So we already talked in our episode on Rudolph about the production process. Guess what? It's the same process. I mean, the first thing is that big hit with Rudolph, Frosty is a hit, Little Drummer Boy is a hit, and NBC's just going, well, let's do another one, bigger budget, and they do exactly what they do in all those other movies, which is they find a song. In this case, it is Santa Claus is Coming to Town, written in 1934 by Fred Coots and Haven Gillespie, written for Eddie Cantor, who had a big hit with it, and that is the origin of this thing. And then they go through and go, all right, it's same writer as we had on Rudolph. What can you make out of the song? And that is all the pre-production I have, John. That's the entire thing.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah.
Right, there you go.
Should we go meet Santa?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
So again, just like in Rudolph, it starts with a newsreel like Citizen Kane.
Yeah. What's that? I guess they're like, look, this is the formula. Don't mess with it.
Today, children everywhere are making preparations for an event of world-shaking significance, the annual visit of Santa Claus.
I love that in this world that it's just hard news that Santa is going to come every year.
Yeah, yeah. I think there was a time back then where that was actually kind of, we made a big deal. Remember and I know it still happens today, but it was a big deal to like local news stations would be monitoring Santa's ride. Where is he at over the globe? Those kinds of things. So I think back then when this was made, it actually was a big deal that Santa was coming on Christmas Eve, and people wanted to keep this fantasy alive for as long as possible.
And in this news narration, we hear our first little echo of the song because we hear...
Informed sources report legions of junior citizens are making monumental efforts not to cry and not to pout.
And we see kids getting ready for Christmas, and then we see this kind of half snowmobile, half truck, mail truck pulling up, spewing exhaust, and we hear in a very familiar voice,
well, hello there. My name's Special Delivery Kluger, S.D. for short.
This voice is very familiar to me, John.
Yes, it is Fred Astaire, a fantastic, of course, American dancer, actor, singer, musician, choreographer, and presenter, a gentleman who worked for over 75 years in the entertainment business, of course, the lead in so many phenomenal films. We did Holiday Inn with Fred Astaire on this particular show. He won an Honorary Academy Award, a BAFTA Award, 3 Emmy Awards, 2 Golden Globes, and a Grammy. And of course, the classic films he was a part of with Ginger Rogers, like Top Hat, which was the inspiration for Penguin. If you watch the Penguin series, that Top Hat movie was a big deal in that series. Swing Time, Shall We Dance, as we said, Holiday Inn, Easter Parade, The Bandwagon, Funny Face, Silk Stockings. He was in one of my favorite disaster films from the 1970s, The Towering Inferno, which I would love to do. I would love to do on this show at some point. But certainly a gentleman who is so revered, so beloved, a member of numerous Hall of Fames, won the Kennedy Center, was awarded the Kennedy Center honor there for performance in 1978. But what a great voice to bring in, right? Like we had Burl Ives in the first shot across the bow. Like, okay, Burl, he's pretty popular in the mid-60s. Good. We're going to level up and get Fred Astaire, a classic guy with numerous decades, and probably parents and grandparents were very excited that Fred Astaire was voicing this character, and kids were probably just like, oh yeah, this is a cool little character. And the design of him is pretty interesting as well, with the kind of bigger face and the skinnier limbs and body. I thought it was an interesting and striking character to come in with.
I think it is absolutely Rankin and Bass leveling up in terms of their casting, but I also look at it from the other perspective, which is I think it is the understanding from people like Fred Astaire of how big and important these movies were. Like I want to be associated with this family thing that's going to play forever.
Yeah, great point, dude.
You know, and we're going to talk about it in our short, but it's like they do the same things with the other ones, because it's Jimmy Durante is on Frosty, and it's Jose Ferrer is on Little Drummer Boy, and they'll do this forever. It's like there's, you know, they'll bring in some big actor, or Jose Ferrer isn't a huge actor, but an important one to do winner. These parts. Oscar winner, yeah.
Well, I like this too, Steve, because it also, they're older, so there's a sense of a grandfatherly care to the delivery, which you can hear right off the bat. Fred has such a soft voice. It's like tap shoes landing on cotton is what Fred Astaire is. And so when he begins speaking, there's a sense of authority, but also a sense of wanting to connect with you as he's talking about this stuff. Smart move.
And apparently not only is he the guy that is delivering all the letters to Santa, but he doesn't really seem to care about any laws about opening Santa's letters, because he goes right into them talking about all the questions they ask. Yeah. And the first one says,
Dear Santa, why do you wear a red suit? My turn. Dear Santa, why do you come down the chimney when I'm asleep?
How about these?
Why do you have whiskers? Why do you live at the North Pole? Why do you leave presents?
And I think right at the beginning, just from the opening camera moves, you can tell that they have leveled up.
Yeah, it's a much more professional and slick special than we saw with Rudolph, for sure.
And what we introduce is there are all these questions. And guess what? This is a well-structured show, because this show is now going to answer all the questions that we just heard about Santa and his origins.
Yeah.
And he goes into, and this is again just what we do in Rudolph, which is he goes into the song that is the title of the show, but doesn't go that far into the song.
So you better watch out. You better not cry. You better not pout. I'm telling you why.
Just getting you a taste, right? Because we're right at the beginning. What's the rush?
Yep.
He's going to get to it in just a second. I do like this, though, this approach, because it's so smart, Steve. You know, this is when you're creating content or creating films and TV shows, like you want to do something that can be kind of evergreen yet feel like it's current, right? And so kids are always going to have questions about Santa Claus. You can plop them right down in front of the television, and they can have maybe some of their questions that they came up with as young kids in their heads being answered here through the show, through the special. So it's so smart.
And then we go into a really lovely, well-designed credit sequence where all the credits are sort of on letters and packages that are getting thrown around. But it's also a Fred Astaire dance number.
Yeah.
It's really, and they did definitely study Fred Astaire. I mean, I don't think this character is dancing like Fred Astaire, but they did study Fred Astaire dance moves to try to, make it match up.
I also think the music here is really important, right? From the beginning, the music has this, I don't know what it is. It has this like ethereal importance to what they're doing. And you can hear it it's not just da-da-da-da-da. It's much more like, we're floating on this wind of snow and we're gonna talk about this. It's like it's kind of pseudo importance to it that is kind of magical and ethereal. And look, it's 1970, right? And so it is the flower power time or coming out of the flower power time. It is this kind of tie-dye mystical type of thing, and so maybe they're trying to appeal. And certainly later, when what's her name? The character here, Miss Jessica, when she has her solo about realizing how much she loves Santa and the toys, that is a super 70s video, man. So
it is.
So I like that there's a little bit of the psychedelic element to this, just bubbling under the surface here, man.
And the credits end, and SD is saying he's going to answer these questions about Santa. And then we introduce a theatrical device, a filmic device that I have never seen in anything else that I think is brilliant, which is that he's talking to the letters.
Yes.
And the letters can talk back.
Best place to start is at the very beginning, when Santa was just a little baby.
You mean Santa was once a baby?
Of course. Everybody's got to be a baby at least once in their lives.
Which doesn't make any logical sense, but it does two things. One is that it turns monologue into dialogue, which is more interesting. Like it's not as pure exposition because you're talking to someone.
For sure.
And B, you get these voices of these kids.
Yeah.
And I think it feels to me just like these are really, really real kids that they recorded. That it grounds the whole thing in a kind of homey reality to me.
Agreed.
And we cut to this, we see this town, the city in the snow. And again, the production is so far beyond Rudolph.
It's amazing, yeah.
In one of the northern countries, there was a small city called Sombertown.
Right from the name Sombertown, we get kind of what this is like.
Where they've mined unobtainium.
Now, the main reason for all this gloom was the mayor. A mean old grouch of a fellow who was known as Burgermeister Meisterburger.
I've always loved the name Burgermeister Meisterburger.
It's a great name. A great name, yeah.
And we see Grimsley, his sort of guard, assistant, henchman guy. And both of these guys, I understand, are played by the same guy, Paul Frees.
Yeah, Paul Frees, he plays Grimsley. As you said, Meisterburger plays Topper, animals, guards, the doctor. He is the newsreel announcer at the beginning of the of this particular special. He is the voice of all the Kringle brothers, Dingle, Ringle, Tingle, Wingle, and Dingle. He is the voice of numerous male townspeople, a businessman, a Scrooge-related man, the Tree Monsters, Willy Willow, and Peter Pan, and more. And this guy, him and Mel Blanc were basically the battle for the man of 1,000 voices. And Mel ended up winning probably because of Looney Tunes and Bugs Bunny, but Paul Frees voiced he was Boris in the Rocky and Bullwinkle show. He was the English dub for Toshiro Mifune in Midway. For that. And he was in Some Like It Hot. And his voice was as the falsetto voice for Tony Curtis's character of Josephine in that. He is the ghost host at the Haunted Mansion attraction in Disneyland and Walt Disney World. Yes, that's his voice. He is the voice of Ali and Aaron's father and the three wise men in The Little Drummer Boy. He is numerous voices in Frosty the Snowman, including Santa Claus. He's in Frosty's Winter Wonderland, Rudolph's Shiny New Year. He's in Nestor. He's the voice of Mabruk and the cat in The Last Unicorn. He's in the Hobbit and Return of the King animated ones that came out in the 70s, which we both love. And this one, I think you're going to love, Steve, the most. He provided the voices of both John Lennon and George Harrison in the 1965 Beatles cartoon series. That was Paul Frees doing a voice of both of John Lennon and George Harrison, which is insane. He was the Thing in the 1967 series Fantastic Four, and he was the voice of the Pillsbury Doughboy, the Fruit Loops Toucan Sam, that was previously voiced by Mel Blanc and then later by Maurice LaMarche. He was the voice of Boo Berry and a British detective in the Taster's Choice thing, and he was the narrator in the film The Manchurian Candidate.
Wow.
So a lot of things. And one last thing I want to say, he was the second voice of Carr in the Kit versus Carr third season episode of Knight Rider. And that personally is really awesome for me personally.
That is fantastic. What a career. I mean, that's amazing.
I know. I've only scratched the surface, by the way. There's like so much more.
So I'm going to ask a totally leading question, and I don't expect you to give the answer that I have in my head.
Okay.
But my entire life, I have looked at Burgermeister Meisterburger, and he's always reminded me of a particular actor, and it's probably because this is in the 70s when I was watching this guy regularly on TV.
Okay.
It always reminded me of this person.
Oh, interesting. I don't know. I always think of the dude from Young Frankenstein.
Oh, I could totally see that.
Right? Kenneth Mars with the hand, yeah.
For me, it was a very grumpy boss in a Midwestern news station.
Oh.
I always saw Ed Asner. I couldn't look at Burgermeister Meisterburger and not see Ed Asner.
I hear you. Small frame, kind of rounder. I can absolutely see that, yeah.
Look what was discovered on your front stoop. What? What, Grinsley? The milk? The daily paper? No, sir. A baby. Oh, is that all?
And then a spit take. That thing, we saw that with the elf boss in Rudolph. This is a very common move they like, which is I don't hear the thing you said at first and then go, what? Like that kind of thing.
And there's a note. Please, sir, take care of my child and protect him from the dangers of the mountain of the whispering winds. He will be exceptional if only given the love he needs.
What I find interesting about this is like Moses in the Rushes. You know what I mean?
Oh, kind of. Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah,
and we never find out where he came from.
Nope. Except that the Klaus name is connected to where he came from, but we never find out, you're right, where he actually came from or who his mother is. Yeah.
No, it is a very religious backstory or a superhero backstory. He's rocketed as a baby to Earth,
Great point. Great point. A Kryptonian?
Oh, take the little baggage to the orphan asylum. That's the proper place for foundlings anyway.
It's my understanding that the baby crying is also Paul Frees.
Oh, wow. And wouldn't be surprised.
He's everything in this scene.
Yeah.
And so the guard takes the baby out on a sleigh and he's pulling him on a rope, which breaks. So he's lost him. And then, which is crazy, is that apparently the winds just picked up the sleigh and delivered him across the mountains.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing because we hear it.
Well, you see, that mountain was the home of the awful, the terrible. Oh, I hate to even say his name. That mountain was the home of the Winter Warlock.
And we see a very scary kind of silhouette of the Winter Warlock.
Yeah.
the strange hermit of the north, who lived alone in a ghostly palace of ice, practicing his strange spells and snowy incantations.
Again, he's like the Abominable, right? Like
Yeah, totally.
There's a repeating of the beats here.
Yep. And the animals hide the baby, and they take him down to the Rainbow River Valley where there's these beautiful buildings.
And there, by a bend in the magical stream, was the home of a jolly family of little people. Elves, you might call them. Kringle was their name.
So here's one of the first questions. How did he get the name Kringle? Now we have an answer.
Oh, yeah. Right. Good point. Yes.
The door was answered by an elf named Dingle Kringle to be precise, which, as you said, Paul Frees.
Wiggle my ears and tickle my toes. Methinks I see a baby's nose. It's more than a nose. There's a whole baby attached to it.
I love the way they obviously he doesn't make this sound, right? They adjusted the sound and audio.
Yeah, they sped him up.
I like the personalities he gives to all of them, and the fact that they say their names as they're handing the baby off to it. Such a great little moment for sure.
What is it, Dingle? It's a baby, Zingle. A baby what, Wingle? A baby, Tingle. I like babies, Bingle.
It's all fun. And so they brought it to the elf queen, which is Tanta Kringle.
Yes.
And you go like, oh, Tanta Kringle. That sounds a lot like something familiar we're going to get to. Because Tanta sounds like Santa, you know?
Oh, good point. Right. Wow, look at you going deeper on these things. And this is Joan Gardner who is voicing Tanta Kringle. She plays Tanta. She plays the grouchy store lady, female people, and more. She is the voice of Zazu in the Pound Puppies. She's the voice of Mrs. Wentworth in the Snorks series that was there in the 1980s. And in Here Comes Peter Cottontail, she was numerous voices. If you remember that 1970s animated special as well. So a good actress with a lot of voiceover credits, legendary voiceover credits on her resume.
I know there wasn't good money in voiceover back in the day, and these people were but I could totally see you and me and Vogel and Shannon and Mike Ross and a few other people like being in just a studio where they're like, okay, we need you to do a giant angry gorilla. Okay. We need you to do a little baby. Done. We need to, and just doing that all day and coming up with new voices and playing, it sounds like a blast.
It's still that way now. Are you kidding? Like I doing voiceover, auditioning for voiceover work, doing voiceover work over the last 20 years, those things that you're told from the beginning, and certainly having friends like Vogel and others who are showrunners for animated series, they make it really clear the way they save money on productions is you cast one actor and you ask them to do numerous voices and you're only paying them one rate. And so and it depends on how famous the actor is. Obviously, I'm sure Fred Astaire was making more than Joan Gardner on this particular special. So it just all depends on that, on that situation. But yeah, people, that's still the practice today. Do numerous voices. That'll get you the job.
Yeah. And they see the name Claus on the little necklace.
Unusual name. However, we shall call him Kris Kringle. Yay!
And not only do we get the answer about the name, but what are all the Kringles wearing? They're wearing these fluffy red outfits with white fluffy trim.
Yeah.
So we're like, oh, now I know the answer to another question.
Yeah.
And now we see like a little kid version of Kris as they're teaching him.
As soon as he was old enough, they set up a little school and taught him all the important things. How to read and write and talk and count stars on a crystal night and how to make toys.
Santa was homeschooled.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. That was the Kringles' main occupation. They were toy makers. The only problem was there were no children to give them to.
Because Sombertown is on the other side of the mountain, and they can't get the toys to Sombertown because of the Winter Warlock. And so they just make toys and toss them out the back. And apparently they've been doing this for years.
Yeah. I feel like this should be a musical. Someone should have turned this into a musical. I mean, I can absolutely. Sombertown. Like, it just would be perfect.
Well, I mean, it is a musical.
Well, yes, I know. But,
people break into songs regularly in this. So
a Broadway musical, I think.
Yeah. Hey, look, Sombertown is a great name.
I know. I agree.
Someday when I'm bigger, I'll take them for you, Tanta Kringle.
I really do think this is a very well structured. It's simple. Of course, it's a kid's story. I get that. But this is well structured and well figured out.
It's ironic, too, because there is no, maybe we'll discover it as we have a conversation, but it feels like there's no real arc for Kris. He was very clear about what he wanted to do from the beginning. I like this family. I like making toys. I want to give toys to kids. Tanta, you're sad that we can't give the toys to kids. Don't you worry about it. I'm going to handle it. I'm going to get on top of it. So there's a progression here of where he's very clearly found his purpose from a very young age, and he is driving the story forward because he is going to make this happen.
I mean, I think that's a really great observation. Kris certainly learns things.
Yes.
But he does not change.
No.
His essence is this. Well, and this is the thing, is that we tend to go like, okay, a character in a movie has got to change. They have to have an arc. It's not actually always true. In fact, I think in general, the way that not necessarily in Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, but the way Superman is generally handled is he knows who he is from the beginning. You know what I mean? He's
very clearly.
It's like Steve Rogers doesn't really, he learns things, he evolves, but the essence of Steve Rogers is there when we meet him as a skinny guy fighting with the garbage can lid at the beginning of Captain America, the First Avenger.
Which is why you buy it when Stanley Tucci chooses him in the movie. Yeah.
Well, and that's the kind of person that, and that's the kind of person Santa Claus is.
Yes, 100%.
Santa Claus wasn't a trouble kid who had to overcome something and become generous later on. No, he is who he was.
Right.
I like, by the way, that the Kringles, I feel like it's kind of a Midwestern / Swedish immigrant accent or something like that. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but I like it.
It's all taking place in Germany, so I don't know. But it's a great point you're making, that it could be like over the hills, that Nordic kind of
something.
Reference.
And then what we hear is about how important it is to be toy makers and how important it is for them to have their toys played with, because they aren't just any toy makers, John. They are the first toy makers to the king.
It's a difficult responsibility when you accept an appointment from His Majesty. You must strive for just a perfect quality. Then you're the first toy maker to the king.
And here it's interesting because we have this mix now of stop motion with 2D animation. So we see all these drawings that are being animated, and we also see the toys being animated. And it's a fun song. Yeah. I don't think it advances the story that much, but it's a fun song.
Yes. Yeah, we have to remember, these were being made for kids to be entertained. They weren't being made for the Cine-Files to break down and explore and analyze these things. So, yeah.
And as we're seeing all these toys and the king and all the toy makers of the past, one of the things, by the way, is as we go by this shelf of toys, we see a bunch of dolls that look a lot like Jessica, who we're going to meet later on in the movie.
Yeah.
And as the song ends, we hear one of those kid voices that pop up all the time going,
"So that's why he makes such wonderful toys."
That's why. The Kringles taught him everything they knew.
So again, we've answered this next question, Yeah. And we also see Kris has grown up and he's now much taller than the Kringles. And then we hear,
of course, Kris had other teachers.
And we see him running with the deers and climbing with the squirrels and playing with the seals. And this is kind of like, to me, when Merlin turned King Arthur in the Once and Future King into different animals to teach him all the things he needed to know to be king. Right. I think this is another piece of our kind of superhero origin story.
It's a great point. Yeah.
And now Kris is a full big dude.
I'm a man now, Tanta. I can take those toys across the mountain of the Whispering Wind.
And his voice, again, is very familiar to me.
Yeah, well, it's Mickey Rooney. That's the great Mickey Rooney, doing another classic actor from the 30s, 40s, and 50s coming in to do a voice, strong voice, and the voice of Santa Claus here. Pretty incredible. He reprised the voice of Santa Claus in The Year Without a Santa Claus, which we're going to be doing. Rudolph and Frosty's Christmas in July. And the Miser Brothers Christmas in 2008. He even appeared in that one as Santa Claus near the end of his life here. But yeah, he was an American actor who spanned nearly 9 decades in the business. People might forget this. He was the top box office draw from 1939 to 1941, one of the best paid actors of that era. He made 43 films at the peak of his career between his age 15 and 25.
Wow.
Laurence Olivier once said he considered Rooney, quote, the best there has ever been. Laurence Olivier said that about Rooney. Yeah. He won a Golden Globe Award in 1982, an Emmy Award in the same year for the television movie Bill, which I think he plays a mentally handicapped person in that movie. If I remember watching that movie, I remember that affecting me. He was awarded the Academy Honorary Award in 1982. But some of the films, if you want to go back and watch some of the great Mickey Rooney stuff, maybe you don't want to watch the Andy Hardy stuff, Boys Town, Requiem for a Heavyweight, he's hilarious, and It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, Pete's Dragon, and Black Stallion, which are classic ones. And he was nominated for the Academy Award for Supporting Actor in 1957 for The Bold and the Brave, and in 1980 for The Black Stallion, which we did, right? I thought
we did do The Black Stallion, a movie. It's those are early days of the Cine-Files, but that was. We were a little, I think, more just following our interest, and I had watched that with my son, and it is such a well-made movie. And my guess is that people listening to the podcast, it's not one people would go back to listen to, but I recommend it. I think that was a good one from our early days.
Yeah, and I think Mickey's a nice voice for Santa, right? Because Fred Astaire is a much more softer. This one is a much more determined. And the thing we knew about Mickey Rooney, what he made his bones doing Andy Hardy and other characters in the past there, is the determination. We're going to put this show on no matter what. So the energy of determination comes through in the voiceover work that Mickey Rooney is doing here as Kris Kringle, a.k.a. Santa Claus.
I just keep going back to Olivier's comments that he's the best. And this is one where I really wish that I could go back in time and say, okay, Larry, what do you mean by that when you say that?
You're going to call him Larry?
Yeah, wow. In this fantasy, yes. I've given myself the ability to go back in time. So, yeah, I'm going to call him Larry.
Okay.
My understanding, he did go by Larry.
Yeah, yes, with his friends.
So Kris is packing his bag. He's getting ready to go to take the toys to Sombertown, and out comes Tanta with something she made for his trip, a real Kringle suit.
So that's where we got the red suit.
Yep. And he's always worn one just like it.
There's such a sweetness to this special, man. I really love it. Like, everyone is in support of what he's doing. And there will be obviously the obstacles of initially the wizard there, and then later the Burgermeister. But like, there's such an energy of wanting this to happen. And I love that from the characters, you know?
And he heads off carrying his sack of toys into the dark and mysterious woods. And we're setting up like a scary confrontation with the Winter Warlock. But instead, something flies into the snowbank, and there is a cute penguin. And we get some wearing a scarf. Don't know what he's doing in the north, near the North Pole, but we have a nice little bit of dialogue, and he finally says,
I'll call you Topper. Okay? Come on. This way, little feller.
He honks, and now we got a little fun companion.
Yeah, he was called Topper, but then later broadcast versions changed his name to Waddles. But now they've changed it back to Topper. So what a weird thing to make a stand up. You know?
I mean, it's weird that they went, you know what? He needs a penguin. That was weird to begin with. And then they changed. And I guess there's the movies Topper, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe that's why they changed. I don't know. It's weird.
Good point. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we cut to the Warlock, who decides not to go after him. I think he's just kind of going, you know what? For the plot, I think I'll wait and go after him later. That'll be better for the story.
I'm kind of tired.
And look, Sombertown, just sitting there waiting for us, and our good Kringle toys.
That's what they thought. But what they didn't realize was at that very moment in the Sombertown City Hall.
We push it on the City Hall, and there's Burgermeister Meisterburger, who walks out the hall, down the steps on a toy duck, falls and hurts himself. Cut to him in bed. I don't know why he has a thermometer. It seems like it's not necessary for this.
Oh, because he's a drama queen. I mean, come on, you know.
Yeah, as I suspected, you've broken your funny bone.
Which is certainly true of Burgermeister Meisterburger. And when he finds out that it was a toy that did it, he goes,
as I suspected, I hate toys, and toys hate me. Either they are going or I am going, and I am certainly not going, Klinsley.
By the way, a Burgermeister is a chairman of the executive council or cabinet in many towns and cities in Germany. Literally translate to city master. So interesting to have that.
I think as a kid, because it's a burger, that I always just said, like, this is the master of burgers. He can have all the burgers he wants.
This is the Earl of Sandwich. And the master of
Earl of
burgers.
Sandwich over here. And then he, because he is a leader, now goes into his own version. We heard the Toy Makers of the King before, and he is singing, "There'll be no more toy makers to the king."
Right.
And we have a little musical number there.
It must be weird to sing to yourself. You know
right.
what I'm saying?
Well, particularly because he's singing with Grimsley in a duet, and that's both him. Yeah.
So interesting.
So toys are now illegal at just the moment that Kris Kringle is heading into Sombertown.
Yeah.
And I think, again, you can see the filmmaking chops have gone way up because now we have this real color contrast between the totally gray and drab Sombertown and everybody living in it, and the super bright red hair, red clothes, Kris Kringle walking into it.
Yeah, because he's coming in to liven the place up. You know, and I love the difference between Burgermeister and Kris Kringle, right? Because if Kris Kringle had tripped on a toy duck, he'd have, he would have laughed. He'd have laughed and not had these edicts. But because Burgermeister is very much an angry man, probably a supremely insecure man, he sees this as a threat to himself, even though these are inanimate objects, right? And so he creates this scenario as opposed to just rolling with it. So there's a lesson, I think, kind of hidden in all of this as well about how to deal with complications or issues that pop up or accidents that happen, you know?
I think it's a great point, and it makes me think there are people out there, and I've known many of them, who just refuse to take any responsibility or blame for any negative thing that happens on themselves.
Oh, wow.
They always blame. I mean, you know people like this.
Yes.
They always blame outside. And so this dude wasn't looking where he was going. Yes, someone left a toy on the steps, but he wasn't looking where he's going. He tripped and fell. And so rather than going, hey, I need to be more careful in the future, he blames the toy. He don't even blame the kid who left the toy.
No.
This is a total, and I mean, I have had bosses like this many times who just like something went wrong and they threw one of their assistants or employees under the bus when it was clearly their decision that had screwed everything up.
Right. Because they want to keep their job.
Yeah. And then I love Kris Kringle walking into the city. It is so much the friendly small town person walking into the big city.
Ho, 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 ho. The townspeople didn't know what to make of Kris.
Hi there. Nice day, friend.
Don't hi me.
Good morning, ma'am.
You ought to be ashamed of yourself, young man, wearing such outlandish clothes.
Clothes?
Remember, this is 1970. So there's a little bit of, what would you say? There's a little bit of anti-establishment to this.
Totally.
Right? Everyone's gray. Everyone's uniform. I'm coming in as this happy, bright color person in terms of my clothes, and I'm going to shake things up. And all of you are unsettled by this. You know? I love it.
Yeah. It is funny. I mean, we had the whole misfit versus conformity thing in Rudolph.
Yes.
And now we have the bright colored person walking into the dark drab thing, the toy maker coming into the more like serious place. These are part of what made me become an artist. You know what I mean? This kind of a story.
I think there's a lot of us who were moved by this story. You know, who cheers for Potter? Clearly nowadays a lot of people do. And so it's an interesting world nowadays that we're looking at. So yeah.
And it's so much so that they all barricade their doors and go inside. They don't even want to be around this colorful guy at all. And we see kids that are doing laundry. More specifically, they're washing stockings at a fountain. and by the way, the Rankin and Bass were very much influenced. They were consciously going, this is Charles Dickens. This is Oliver Twist. This is, Scrooge and Christmas Carol. Like that. That's what they wanted this world to look like.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Are you washing out stockings?
Uh-huh. It's one of our daily duties.
Then we hang them by the fireplace so they dry overnight.
That's the only way they judge you around here, by how many chores you do and how clean your stockings are.
It's like, oh, it's one more clue. There's one more thing there.
What an existence, man.
You don't have to look so glum about it.
Why?
I don't know. I just don't like sour faces. Now, I got some real nice goodies for you. But not if you look like this. You better watch out. Better not cry. Better not pout.
And I love the moment because it's so funny. This happened in Rudolph too. It's like you're hearing lyrics of the song.
Why?
I'm telling you why.
Yeah.
Because I came to town.
And he says, and looks what I brought. And he dumps all these toys and the kids love it. They get really excited. And then we hear,
wait. You must not play with toys.
And there is this red-headed woman with handheld glasses who comes out to scold him.
And this is Roby Lester, who plays Miss Jessica / the future Mrs. Claus. She was the singing voice for Ava Gabor in Disney's The Aristocats and The Rescuers. And for those of you old enough to remember this, she was the original Disneyland story reader for Walt Disney Records read-alongs. This is the same voice. So for those of you who are old enough to remember, those of you who aren't, like Disney used to issue out these recorded albums of the stories, and you would just listen to the person reading the story as a way of you not reading the story or not reading the book, and you could just listen to them and have them tell you the stories. I miss those records. They don't make those anymore, but it was always cool to have. I guess people do them online now, but like it was cool to have that kind of stuff, you know.
Well, this is the thing again. You know, we said it many times. It's repetitive at this point, but like. When you had that, you couldn't pick to watch a Disney thing whenever you wanted.
Right.
So if you had 2 Disney records in your collection, you listened to them all the time.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And no one could afford to have video that they watched. We didn't have video that we could choose. You could listen to a record. Or I had like records that there was I don't remember what it was called, but it was like a record and it had a slideshow built in. And I had like Tom Sawyer and other stories. So you would like advance each slide while you were listening to the Snow Queen. I had that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those things that's what we had, man.
That's how I started with the Black Hole. I didn't see the Black Hole till years after my cousins had the album. We didn't have enough money for me to even buy an album when I was growing up. So like it was tough I'd have to pick and choose the ones. Like I got the Superman the movie double album, and I had to beg my parents for like months to get that eventually. But like my cousins were a little bit more wealthy than it, or well off, whatever you want to say, and they had the Black Hole album, which is the movie, the Black Hole the movie on the album. And of course, it's not the full movie; it's a truncated version of the movie. But every time I went over there to a function at their house, I would ask them if I could put it on and sit in the room and listen to it. And just by myself sometimes, or sometimes they would join in. But that's how I first discovered the Black Hole. Then years later, when I was able to afford renting it from the video store, I actually got to watch the whole movie. And so it's a whole different experience. There was so much that I hadn't seen in the movie that I was like, what the heck is this? So it was an interesting experience on so many levels.
Well, and today, like my son will see 75 different memes from a movie, having never seen the movie.
Oh, great point.
So he'll know like I can show him things and he's like, oh yeah, I've seen that before. Like little clips or images from movies he's never seen because he watches memes all the time. And it's funny. We've said before that Kris Kringle doesn't really have a character arc. He is who he is. Yes. Jessica totally does.
Yes.
Because she is not pleased.
How dare you come here in those ridiculous clothes and make fun of me?
Clothes again?
You didn't make fun of her.
Why are you making this about you?
Yeah.
This ain't about you.
I wasn't making...
And what do you mean by giving the children toys? Don't you know toys are against the law?
And his reaction to the idea that toys are against the law is fantastic.
Why, that's the silliest thing I ever heard.
Toys are frivolous, impractical, unproductive, and...
And then he hands her a doll. And that's it for Jessica, man.
She's gone.
What's that?
For you.
A China doll? I always wanted one when I was a little girl. But my parents wouldn't... Oh, thank you. I mean...
Watch out for that dolly. She's a hardened criminal, I hear.
Hey, man. Toys are important. Toys are important.
You know what's funny? We just did Sound of Music.
Yeah.
And what is Maria's big point? That the kids have to have play clothes because they have to do what they're supposed to do, which is to play.
Right.
That's exactly what's going on here.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe it is a silly law. I mean...
Oh, what do you say you help me hand out these presents, huh? It's too big a job for one oversized Kringle and a little lost penguin.
So they're starting to hand the presents out. And then there's this like vignette image and he's sitting on the edge of the fountain with kids on his lap. And he sings this song that is Be Prepared to Pay.
Yeah.
And although there are certain weird things about this song, I feel watching it in some levels, the message I really like, which is what he's saying with Be Prepared to Pay. I don't quite, there's a little bit of a weirdness to it, but he's saying basically give some love to other people and you will get things out of it. That is its point.
Sit on my lap.
It's a little. That's what I'm saying. But it's not meant that way. That's not what's going on.
Of course not. But it is. I hear you because I had the same reaction, and I had to tell myself, "Stop it." Tell myself, "Stop it." This is very innocent and fun, and it's supposed to be mirroring, of course, what all kids go through.
Yeah,
you want to sit on Santa's lap, at least here in the States. I don't know how it is in other countries, but
and the message is, whoever you love will give you a little love back. So give a little love and get a little love back. And then, of course, we see the soldiers marching in with the Burgermeister, who's in a wheelchair because of his injured foot from the duck.
See, all the little children are playing with their toys. Playing with their toys!
It's the exact same joke structure as us putting out before.
Don't arrest those children. It was my fault. I gave them the toys.
You? How dare you? You are obviously a nonconformist and a rebel.
Me? Rebel?
Arrest this man immediately.
And again, I think this is really interesting. We have the conformity thing that we, saw in Rudolph.
Yeah.
And then we also have this idea of the giving person who is generous and kind is one rebelling against the system.
Yep.
Yeah.
To be kind is to be rebellious. Right?
Yep.
Weird.
And Kris hands him a yo-yo. And the Burgermeister has basically exactly the reaction that Jessica had.
Yeah.
Yo-yo? I love yo-yos. I used to be able to do all kinds of tricks. Whee!
And then Grimsley ruins everything.
Grimsley's worm tongue. Grimsley is a worm tongue.
He totally is.
Excuse me, sir, but you're breaking your own laws. What? What do you think? What? I have been bamboozled. Arrest him! Arrest him!
But Kris has been trained by the squirrels and the deers and the seals, and he just runs up some trees, climbs over some buildings, and he is out of there.
Peace, y'all.
He does some Kringle parkour is what he does.
Yeah, it is. Kringle core.
Yeah. Ends up in the woods, and we see a sign that says, "You are trespassing on the lands of the Winter Warlock." And then the trees grab him, a la, Wizard of Oz.
Yes. Yeah.
Kris Kringle, you disturbed me for the very last time. Now I have you, and you'll never get away.
And we fade to black, because, of course, these are commercial breaks, we should say.
Yes.
And Kris, not looking too scared at all when we come back, says, "Look, before you do me in,
tell your tree friends to let me loose for a second. You see, I have something for you."
What is this?
Oh, well, I managed to save one little toy, and I'd like you to have it.
You wish to give me a present?
Man, Warlock is not that scary a dude. I mean, this does not take much.
There's quite a lot of people in this special who are very apprehensive or abrasive, but they're clearly hiding a genuine inner child within that hasn't been satisfied. And the toys seem to break those walls down, even Burgermeister for a few seconds.
I do like the joke when the Winter Warlock says,
"But you mustn't mind the tree monsters. Their bark is worse than their bite."
Gotta love a good pun.
I do.
And they let him go, and he reaches into his bag and pulls out an orange choo-choo. And it's the same. It was Jessica, it was then the Burgermeister, as you said, and now we got Winter Warlock. Goes,
"A choo-choo. I've always wanted one."
And as soon as he gets it, and he is gray and scary and angular, and we have this kind of melting ice effect, and suddenly he is smaller and pinker and much nicer.
Yeah. And this is voiced by Keenan Wynn. Great character actor Keenan Wynn, who started acting on Broadway in the 1930s before moving into film and TV projects with Annie Get Your Gun, Royal Wedding, which he did with Fred Astaire, who's in this, Kiss Me Kate, The Absent-Minded Professor, The Americanization of Emily, which is the Julie Andrews one with James Garner, and Dr. Strangelove. He was in Dr. Strangelove as another episode we did. Point Blank, The Shaggy DA, Son of Flubber, Herbie Rides Again, Finian's Rainbow, Once Upon a Time in the West, and Altman's Nashville. He appeared in all of those as an actor. He was in an awesome episode of The Twilight Zone that I remember, A World of His Own, as playwright Gregory West, who uniquely caused series creator Rod Serling to disappear. I don't know if people remember that episode, and the big thing is he was initially cast as Perry White in 1978 Superman.
Really?
Yeah, but Wynn collapsed from exhaustion when the production moved to England and had to be rushed to a hospital, and he was replaced by Jackie Cooper. But
oh wow,
when you look up Keenan Wynn, if you've watched classic movies, you've seen him in a million things. He's got one of those faces, one of those voices, and he works so well here. And I think this is why. How can I say this correctly? I think they wanted to cast actors who people knew and who had experience playing multiple types of roles, so they could give them a lot of material to bring levels to. Voiceover actors can do this as well, of course, but there's something about these people already being known that I think helps people to feel an immediate affection for these characters, and especially with the journeys that they go on separately in this particular special. So I think Keenan Wynn was a great choice for this.
I agree.
What's that?
My icy heart, it's melting.
And I think this is the philosophy of this episode, and it's what we just heard in that song with Kris Kringle, is like, even when someone's bringing evil or anger or hate or anything negative towards you, you give them back love, and it can melt their icy heart, and then they will become a more loving person in return.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of that this is my philosophy in a lot of ways. And even when it's turned out to be wrong, and it has sometimes, there are times where I was hoping to resolve conflicts by reaching out affectionately to people who were, and then it didn't work, and they were continued to be angry. And so this philosophy can lead you to get hurt. And the thing I was thinking about this recently is I would rather occasionally get hurt than give up on trying to reach out first with love, you know?
Look, Mr. Warlock.
Please, call me Winter.
Winter?
Oh, yes. Suddenly my whole outlook has changed from bad to good.
Great.
I don't know if I will put this in, but you know what this is that what this made me think of?
Yeah.
Is you and Vogel introducing Christmas to you, and you now being a huge Christmas lover.
Oh yeah, massive. Yeah. Ironically, not always because of something he did. He just opened the door, and that is what ended up, melting my heart. But then me becoming someone who enjoys the escape of Christmas now much more than I ever did when I was younger. So yeah, 100%.
Why, look here. Changing from bad to good's as easy as taking your first step.
And the music starts, and we go into my favorite number in the whole show, which is One Foot in Front of the Other.
Put 1 foot in front of the other, and soon you'll be walking across the floor. Put 1 foot in front of the other, and soon you'll be walking out the door.
I think this is a great song. I remember as a kid, I always loved this song and always kind of sang this song, and I like the ideas of the song. It harkens back to me to like Wizard of Oz with the If I Only Had a Brain, with the scarecrow trying to walk, and the Tin Woodsman who is limbering up his joints in that. You know, it's like this sort of, it kind of builds to this all of us together, marching together thing.
Yeah.
I really like. By the way, so the chorus is the Mike Sam's Singers. That's who the background voices are for this whole show.
Okay.
The Mike Sam's Singers were on everything, including recording many, many times at Abbey Road.
Oh,
and they are the backup singers for I Am the Walrus and The Long and Winding Road.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Counterculture. That's
awesome. Yep, there you go. And there's a moment where you have, in the midst of the song, you have the Winter Warlock again looking at his reflection, seeing the scary version of himself.
If I want to change the reflection I see in the mirror each morn.
Oh, you do?
You mean that it's just my election?
Just that.
To vote for a chance to be reborn?
I like that a lot, because that's saying you can change.
Yeah.
You have the power to change, you know?
Yeah. Is the song switches when Warlock starts to take his steps, the song switches to a 7/4 time signature, which is an ack-sack or a limping effect, which reflects how the Warlock is struggling to move forward. So the pacing matches his physical movement in the special. So really smart stuff. Again, leveling up, but really smart stuff, even with the songs like this in the special.
Put one foot in front of the other, and soon you are walking across the floor.
So we finish a big finale to singing this song as they're all marching together. And then we see Winter sitting with Kris, and he's now going to help him.
Yeah.
And the way he's going to help him, he makes this snowball, which becomes sort of the magic crystal snowball. And this allows him to see everywhere in the world. And he sees Jessica calling for him.
I thought I'd never find you again. I wanted to bring you these.
And here are these letters from all the children of Sombertown who are asking for more toys. Yeah. It's like, oh, another little piece of the Santa story is coming into place.
You tell those young'uns there'll be plenty of toys, but only if they behave themselves. I can see them when they're sleeping, and I know when they're awake.
Yeah, I'm trying not to be creeped out by this, but yes, that's the truth, yeah.
I mean, yes. Agreed.
You know if they're bad or good?
So you tell them to be good, for goodness sake.
And we come up with a plan because they're against the law, so he's now going to have to slip them in after dark, so they just have to leave their doors unlocked, and he'll do that.
It's amazing how all of this comes through in the story construction. You know, like, I'll bring them back the toys. Oh, I got to sneak them in at night. That's why I show up at night and do all these things. And later we'll find out, of course, that he can only do it once a year because there are so many. And so it's just a fascinating progression of the story that we come to know about him and how he came to be. You know?
It's really smart. And we see him looking at his list and checking it twice to find out who's naughty and nice.
Well, they're all pretty nice.
They're all pretty nice. And he sneaks into Sombertown and he looks for all the doors that are open and he brings toys into them. Yeah. And the Burgermeister gets up the next day and all the kids have toys. And again, he is really angry and he insists that all the town's doors have to be locked. But more letters keep coming to Kris, so he's going to go back again. But this time the door's locked. Yeah. And he wanted to, and in particular, there was a special toy he wanted to deliver to little Susie, who was very sick. Who wanted to know his arc. And Topper starts to make noise. And the way he communicates with Topper is he asks questions.
How to get into the house, but not through the door. Up, the sky, the moon, the stars, the chimney.
Again, there's something fun about destiny. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so, little kids watching this, he can't get through the door. Yeah. Not through the door, up to the sky. And you can picture a little 4-year-old going, the chimney. Mm-hmm. You're going to go through the chimney,
right. Yeah, 100%.
And that's where he goes, jumps up there, goes down the chimney. And of course, the other thing about Santa, things that would make other people unhappy, he's always having fun. He doesn't care if he's getting dirty or has to work hard or dangerous. He's having fun.
Yeah.
It's the next day. He's delivered all these toys through the chimneys, and now the Burgermeister shows up in his wheelchair. Again, there's toys.
If any more toys are found by the fireplace, they will be confiscated, and the children severely punished.
And as he's doing this, he accidentally kicks a toy soldier with like a bayonet standing straight up onto his chair, sits down on it. And one of the things that someone pointed out about this is one of the very few pieces of slapstick comedy in these movies.
Oh, yeah.
And you think of slapstick comedy as just a hallmark of children's entertainment throughout history. Right. Popeye and Bugs Bunny and the Roadrunner and all that stuff. And through so much animation, there's so much slapstick. It's really not a lot of pain and violence in these episodes.
No, right. Because, they don't. That's not the energy they want to put out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, with Burgermeister, it makes sense.
Doggone, how can I get the toys to them? They gotta have toys. Otherwise, their life will be nothing but school and chores and washing their stockings and... The stockings. The stockings.
So he sends another message to Jessica. Burgermeister is back searching the town with his soldiers. They go into this house. They look around to try to find toys. They can't find any toys. And as we're watching them, we can see those stockings hanging in the background at the fireplace, looking like they're stuffed with something. Soldiers head out. They don't find anything. Dad goes,
"Phew. Thank heaven there were no toys."
And the kids run and, of course, pull the toys out of the stockings.
I will set a trap for that bothersome Cringle. His next visit to Sombertown will be his last.
Jessica goes to warn Kris, but she's too late. Kris is already left with all the toys.
You must help me stop Kris. Please, use your magic.
Oh, alas, I've been disenchanted.
So no magic from him.
No magic.
Grimsley shows up with guards, and they march everyone away. Everyone is arrested except for Jessica for some reason. Yeah. We don't arrest.
Just the people living outside the town.
Yeah.
Seeing how that works.
And we're back in the town, and Kris pops out of a fireplace, and there is Burgermeister. And Kris could totally escape, except they have already captured the penguin.
Poor Topper.
So he has to give himself up. He gets handcuffed, sent to the dungeon. And Burgermeister Meisterburger is standing there with a pile of toys and a torch. He's going to burn all the toys in front of the kids.
Children of Sombertown, you will never play again.
And we fade to black.
So this is a little bit of trivia on this one. When it first was shown, this special, obviously network television, there were fewer commercials. So the show, the special could be longer. It's probably why these specials are like 51 minutes and stuff. But when they show them now on ABC and ABC Family, sometimes the specials are edited to accommodate for more commercials. And the songs Be Prepared to Pay and My World is Beginning Today, which we're going to be listening to in a little bit, are cut. And in the ABC Family version, they cut out scenes that may be traumatizing for young viewers. And one of the big scenes they cut is the Burgermeister Meisterburger burning the toys of Sombertown. So this scene is usually cut in the ABC Family version.
So when we did the Star Trek show, Star Trek, hour-long show at this time, they were 51 and a half minutes.
Right.
When I grew up watching Star Trek, they were cut down to 40-something minutes. And so it's always funny, like, when you would get to a scene of, like, I've seen this, but I haven't seen this as much as I've seen everything else.
Yeah, you sensed it. You knew.
The one that always cracked me up is in The Man Trap, which is the first one that aired on network TV. And there's this whole scene where Kirk is delivering spicy peppers to Jose at some starbase or something. And it's like, what? Maybe this was okay that they cut this out.
Like, no, we don't need that one. Yeah.
It's like, so the Enterprise delivers peppers? Huh? Okay.
But also clearly the Burgermeister, and I mean, they're supposed to essentially represent, I guess, a version of Nazism or whatever, because only the evil people in the special, other than Tanta, speak in German accents, right? And they're wearing the old World War I kind of Kaiser helmets and stuff. And so him setting books on fire, there's a real reference. And everyone else is not speaking German. They're speaking American accent. So it's an interesting kind of subtle commentary they're making about this,
Well, no, I think Tenta, it's not quite German. That's why I say I think it's more Scandinavian. I think it's something else. There's, by the way, in the version that I saw, they had some cut-off dialogue because I heard some narration from Fred Astaire who says, well, sir, it looks like Kris was finally, and then it gets cut off. Yeah. And I don't know if your version has that problem.
Isn't it weird? Yeah.
And Jessica is in the town square. She's begging for Kris to be freed, and the Burgermeister refuses.
My eyes are beginning to open for the very first time to what life is really all about. And I know just where I belong. With Kris. Wherever he is.
And then, as you said, we go into the song My World is Beginning Today.
Tossed about the fields and lost among the winds. My world is beginning today.
This is a 70s psychedelic trip, bro.
Totally.
It was so, when I watched it, I was like, oh, this is great. This is a great time capsule of the 70s. And her face being still and the images floating behind her, then animated versus the stop motion versions of herself, which I thought were interesting. So it's clearly meant to convey that she's going on this like journey in her mind about putting everything together and recontextualizing her life and what's important to her. But I love the way this song goes. So that other song is your favorite. This is my favorite song because it's so interesting visually, kind of like a music video for me when I watch this particular section of the special. And I've always loved music videos, so I kind of have a soft spot for this particular song.
And I love some of the design stuff they do with she becomes in brighter clothing.
Yes.
Yeah, all those things are really, really interesting.
Yeah.
And after the song, she knows she's got to figure out how to get everyone free.
Yeah.
And she goes to the cell where the Winter Warlock is.
If only you had your magic powers back.
Alas, I've nothing but a few meager magical leftovers here in my pockets.
Man, Grimsley and the guards, they did not search this guy well. He's got a lot of stuff.
Right.
A short-circuited wand, useless. A dried-up magic potion, powerless. And a few last handfuls of magic feed corn, just junk.
Wait, did you have magic feed corn? What's that do? He goes, all it can do is make reindeer fly. And again, it's like, oh, and there's one more little piece in our Santa Claus puzzle.
Yep.
So Jessica goes off to find the reindeer. She feeds them some nibbles of the corn, and they all fly up. And Fred Astaire says, I bet you know their names. And we hear the lovely kid voices say,
Dasher and Dancer.
And Prancer and Vixen. And Comet and Cupid.
And Donner and Blitzer.
Yes, sir.
And don't forget.
And we cut to Rudolph. And then Fred says, no. That's another story.
Different story. Yeah, I love that.
That's a great, you know what it is? That's an Easter egg.
Yeah,
like that is like totally like what we see today of little joke for the insiders.
Yep.
And Burgermeister looks out the window and sees the flying reindeer, yells to stop, and we see all of Kris, the rest of the Kringles, and Winter fly away on reindeer. No mention whatsoever how they open up those cells. But apparently they just get away.
It would be so funny to do a version. You know, you've seen that when people go with that viral video of the guy going off about, she was the Wicked Witch of the West, dude. You know, that would to do a version of that. They were in prisons, dude. Right. They were in cells. How did they get out? Even with flying reindeer.
They didn't get out of the cock-a-doodie car. We see Burgermeister angry.
We Meisterburgers shall hunt them down throughout the land. Those rebels will not have one moment's peace until they are captured again.
They burned down the Kringle's house?
Yeah.
Like Robin Hood of old, Kris suddenly found himself called an outlaw.
Loved hearing that.
Yeah. We see him on a wanted poster, and we hear...
Wanted, dead or alive, the terrible toy maker.
They've done this several times where we see text on screen, but you're also hearing it. And I bet they did this because they knew that a bunch of their audience didn't know how to read yet.
Oh, good point.
Yeah. So they did both.
Good point.
And Kris is looking at this poster, but his back is to us, and we hear,
oh, well, those posters are not going to do them any good now.
Turns around, and now Kris Kringle's got a big, full red beard.
Yeah.
One more little piece of Santa coming together.
But you should not use your Kringle name. It's dangerous.
Not call myself Kringle. What other name would suit me?
There is one.
And that's when we pull out the thing he had around his neck and the name Claus.
Yeah, they found him with that when he was a baby.
I knew it. That's where he got his name from.
Mm-hmm. And it was that name he asked Jessica to share.
And again, I love this, which is like, now we know, oh my God, that's Mrs. Claus.
Yep. So cool.
All the elements of an origin story. And we go basically to their wedding. We're walking through the woods. She's wearing a veil. It's being held on Christmas Eve. And they stand in this beautiful grove of trees where the trees have almost become a cathedral. And do you want to know what this made me think of?
Oh, yeah. Tell it.
We're outlaws from the city, the horrible guards that are trying to find them because they're violating the basic rules of this community. And so the only place they can get married is in the woods.
Oh, yeah.
It's Braveheart, man.
Braveheart. It's a great point. Yeah.
This is totally Braveheart.
And Robin Hood, I imagine, if you married.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No church ever looked nicer.
Oh, please, let me have just a little magic.
And the trees light up. And so now we see Christmas trees.
I can't explain to you why, but I got really emotional about Keenan Wynn in this moment when he got on his knees.
Yeah.
Prayed. And there's just the way he delivered that line, like a genuine request from the kindest parts of his soul. You know, like, please give me just a little bit more magic to basically bless this wedding, you know, and the lights come up. And of course they make a reference to presents being under the tree, but like the lights coming up, that was such a great moment. And I had to stop. I actually legitimately got emotional. I don't know why. Like, it's stupid things like this that happen to me that I'm an old dude, like little things like
me too.
Genuine affection or genuine care. like in a delivery, right? It just affects you as you get older.
Well, you know what? Something I hadn't thought about until you just
said
said
young, man. Stay young. Anyway, go ahead.
Get old and get sweet. It's nice. It's nice.
I hate it. Go ahead.
Is that as a Jewish kid growing up, I think that these shows, with the exception of Little Drummer Boy, which is a different thing, is that these shows do a beautiful job of showing a secular but slightly religious Christmas.
Yes. I mean, why is the warlock on his knees praying? Right? That's totally a Christian.
It's religious, but they're not saying, they're not excluding me as a Jewish kid.
Right.
You know what I mean? Right. They're saying this is this universe. I mean, it very much is an American kind of way of thinking about this ostensibly religious holiday, but treated in a, for some people can have it, but not treated in a religious way.
Yes.
But there was no rest for our little group of outcasts. Soon they were forced up beyond the reaches of civilization, up far past the most northern city, past where even most animals live, up to the North Pole.
We see that castle appear, which again has gotten an upgrade since Rudolph. This is all looking a little bit nicer.
Santa's castle and workshop up at the North Pole.
Well, as soon as the buildings were built, they settled in and started making toys in earnest.
And years have gone by, and we see Kris and Jessica. They put on a little bit of weight. They got a little bit of gray in their hair. They're starting to look like Santa and Mrs. Claus. And then what's really interesting is in most stories, you would expect there to be a final confrontation with the bad guy.
No, I know.
But we don't.
I totally forgot that we never had a confrontation at the end. Because it's been a while since I've seen the special. I totally forgot that we didn't have a confrontation. It just, time marched on. And eventually the Burgermeisters weren't important anymore. And people revered Santa. That's fascinating.
And the reason that Rankin and Bass did this was they didn't want, you know, like the Bumble falls off the cliff, but Bumbles bounce because we don't want to kill anybody. Like they didn't want a violent or a confrontational ending to this. They just wanted it to be about Santa, you know?
Makes sense. Makes sense.
And now when we see them, they're looking like the full Santa. You know, it's the beards are white, the hair is white, they're heavy, you know, they look like Santa and Mrs. Claus now. The problem is they're getting so many orders, he says,
I'm afraid I'm going to have to limit my journeys to one a year. But on which night should I go out?
And he goes out and he looks up the stars and we hear.
It wasn't a hard decision to make. They chose, of course, the holiest night of the year, the night of profound love, which was the perfect night for giving.
Christmas Eve?
Christmas Eve.
And Santa flies off on his sleigh. And we go back to Fred, who says,
and that is the story of Santa Claus.
Gee, he's so wonderful. Everybody must love him.
Well, most everybody.
We cut to a grumpy old man who says,
bah, humbug.
And I like the woman at the cashier during Christmas who's clearly just overwhelmed. Yeah. And then the businessman who says,
how can they talk about Santa Claus when there's so much unhappiness in the world?
That one got me.
Yeah.
That one got me because I've been having a hard time with Christmas this year with you know, some of the stuff that's happened recently and some of the stuff that's been happening, and certainly, you know, Steve, as we're recording this, we're a day after another school shooting, and you just can get really down. But like what he says there in response to that feeling, because that's what I've been feeling, I thought was a really great response.
They missed the whole point. Lots of unhappiness? Maybe so. But doesn't Santa take a little bit of that unhappiness away?
Supposed to remind you that you can have hope, that there is possibilities for more. And I thought that was a great response, you know?
I really think it's kind of brilliant because the guy is basically saying, how can you talk about joy and love and compassion and kindness when there's so little joy and love and compassion and kindness in the world? It's like, yeah, exactly. That's why we have to talk about it.
Exactly. That's true.
But what would happen if we all tried to be like Santa and learned to give as only he can give?
This is the message we want in our holiday season.
I agree. It is the message we want.
And what's cool is what we see is these images of the kids playing with toys, of Santa giving them their first toys at that fountain, of the choo-choo being given to the Winter Warlock, of Santa and Jessica who are looking out at the stars, you know?
Yeah.
And remember, behave yourselves, because Santa can still look into his magic snowball and see just what you're up to.
And now we finally go into Santa Claus is Coming to Town, sung by the great Fred Astaire.
You better watch out, you better not cry, you better not pout, I'm telling you why. Santa Claus is coming to town.
He's driving his little sleigh, and Winter jumps on, and kids jump on, and we have this big, huge thing, even topper. And then we go to Santa's castle, and we see him and Jessica on the top floor, and she's helping him with something, and then he comes out the front door.
Santa Claus is coming to town. Merry Christmas!
And that is the end of Santa Claus is Coming to Town.
What a damn good special. You know,
it really is.
It's just, as you said, it's your favorite one. So I'll do quick final thoughts so you can end this particular episode. And I know for me, it was just great to revisit this again because there's such a positive energy throughout the whole special. And no matter what he confronts, no matter what he comes up against, he doesn't let it affect him in a negative way. He's always like, well, all right, you can take me in. All right, you this. All right, here, let me give you a toy first before the trees beat me up or take me down. Let me just give you this. And so these little things of, because the toy can be symbolic of more than just a toy, right? Let me give you something that brings the walls down and gives you hope again. And that's what Santa really represents, actually, at the end of the day, for a lot of people, is the hope and the promise of something good, something more, something that brings you happiness in the midst of whatever you're going through, or adds on to the happiness if you're already in a happy place in your life. And so there's all of that courses through this special that I think is fantastic to witness, plus the voiceover work and the animation here, all of it. There's just a very sweet heart at the center of this, and you can't resist it when you watch it. And the songs, all of it, just work in tandem to deliver a really effective special that still holds up in 2024, in my opinion.
So for me, it's like, if you just look at Rudolph, and then you look at this, you can learn a lot about filmmaking and a lot about stop motion filmmaking, because it's just like they just upped the game. The camera is moving better. The designs are better. The framing is better. There's more. They obviously have more money. They've built out these sets more. They've thought through all this stuff more. So just on, we always talk about filmmaking on the Cine-Files, and this is a really good way to just learn along with them. You go and see, okay, this is how they did in Rudolph, and then this is how they improved it here. Right. I think all that stuff is great. We talked about this term, the promise of the premise, which I learned from Blake Snyder, who wrote Save the Cat. And the basic idea is, the movie has a premise, and by the end, you should deliver on that promise.
Yeah.
So that if you're watching a movie that is a huge epic, well, at some point, you should have those huge epic shots. If you're watching a movie where someone's going to get revenge, well, by the end, they got to get revenge.
Right.
This movie, the premise is, we are going to learn the origin story of Santa, and we are going to answer all the important questions, the details about Santa's life, the suit, the letters, the toys, the chimneys, all this, the sleigh, the reindeer, all that stuff. It totally delivers on the promise of the premise. Yeah. It successfully finds a way in this story to answer all these questions, which I think is great. And there's something very satisfying to me about each one that is like, okay, there's the letters. Oh, that's how he knows if you're naughty or nice. Like, I love it's very systematic. And the basic moral of give love, and that will change people. Give love and you can get love. And that Santa Claus, I'm so glad you pointed it out very early on. It's like, this guy doesn't change.
No.
Because he's already got it figured out.
Yeah.
He knows what's right,
That's what makes him special. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's what makes him a great hero. And I really do think that this is the treatment of Santa Claus as a superhero, and to me, he is definitely in the Superman Captain America camp of, this is a really, truly, truly good person who only wants to do good in the world and he isn't haunted by demons. He isn't angry. He doesn't have internal conflicts. He knows what's good and he knows what's right. And I think those are great stories to have.
I agree.
So that's what we think of Santa Claus is Coming to Town. Of course, we'd love to hear your thoughts. How are you enjoying your journey through Rankin and Bass films? You can visit us on our Facebook page. Just do a search for the Cine-Files. You can also find us on Twitter at Center_Files, the Cine-Files podcast on Instagram. You can subscribe to the show at all the usual places, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify and YouTube. If you're on Spotify, you can leave comments on individual episodes, which is really nice. You can do the same on YouTube. You can leave reviews on both Apple Podcast and Spotify. They're still really helpful. Yes, we've been around for almost 9 years. Yes, we have subscribers who have been with us since the very beginning. But if new people want to find the show, they find them based on recent ratings. So those recent ratings still mean a lot if you have time to do that. And if you want to buy or stream these Rankin and Bass films along with every other movie we've ever reviewed, you can do so at Cine-Files.net. And you can reach me at SR Morris on Twitter and Blue Sky, as well as SR Morris on Instagram. John, how would they reach you?
Absolutely. You can reach me at The Rocha Says on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky, and Twitch, on the Outlaw Nation on Twitch. And my YouTube channel, youtube.com/John Rocha Says. See all the stuff we do there with the Geek Buddies, the Jedi Way, the Hot Mic, all those crazy shows we have on there, as well as my reactions and reviews. And my other podcast, the Geek Buddies and the Hot Mic, that are there for you all to subscribe to as well.
And that is it for today. But we are going to be back with you tomorrow on Christmas Day with John's favorite Rankin and Bass, an episode that he will be leading, and I will be the color man, and that will be The Year Without a Santa Claus.